Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. This is Rusty and Heather Bryant, and we're in the middle of a little series that we started a couple of weeks ago where we've been just going through and sharing our story. I almost said an updated version of our story. I guess it kind of is, but I mean, the story stays the same. And so,
but it's been a while since
since
we told it.
And we kind of, we have new insights and things that we learn and that God keeps revealing to us. And I don't know, I think that, I didn't mean to say, I wasn't going to start off by saying this, but I think that that's a part of, people asking us all the time just about, kind of when's it going to end? When am I going to stop, feeling the pain or the hurt or, and like we've had lots of conversations about that. And, the story never ends, but I don't think that it's really supposed to. I think that God's supposed to continue writing your story, and your pain and your trauma is pretty much interwoven into your story. And so it's really just a choice of how you allow God to continue to write that story.
Yeah. And, a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, let me tell you about my relationship with the Lord. And they start with something that happened 20 years ago. And I'm like, I get it that may have started the your journey with the Lord, but I want to know what He's doing right now in your heart and in your mind and in your thought life and all of that. And so for us, if we just focused on 14 years ago and what He did then we're missing what He's continuing to teach us. And I think that that's what is so amazing about what God is choosing to use us for, is that He is using our 14 years of story of how He has changed us and how He has drawn us closer to Him and how He used a terrible, terrible time in our life to be used for His glory. And if we only focused on what He did on that day 14 years ago or a week later 14 years ago and got stuck there, we would miss the amazing things that He has for us along the way.
Well, one of the cool things about our logo is that it's the stacked rocks, which, especially in the Old Testament, where they would set up these stones and these stacked stones as reminders of God's faithfulness. And, for us, going back to 14 years ago, although some people are like, why do you just always talk about it? Well, it is kind of where we feel like our purpose is right now in sharing with other couples, but it also just in our own personal journeys, I think it's so important because it just is a reminder of God's faithfulness, just like those stones. That was the point, that was the turning point in our lives and in our marriage. And, could God have done it some other way? This was the story. Right. This was the story. And so we're just allowing Him to continue to write it.
Yeah.
And so, this is a very timely, and part of the reason why we decided to do this little series is because this was the month of confession 14 years ago. So if you want to know where we are in the series, 2 weeks ago, we told the confession, basically the day of confession, and kind of those next couple of days after. And then we went back last week and kind of led up to it and told some of the things that were dangerous and warning signs and the slippery slope that, kind of created the fall and how, you got to the place where you did the things that you did. And so now we want to just jump back ahead. We want to jump ahead of the confession, and we want to start telling the actual story of redemption and how it happened. And as we started talking about it, the reason why it is timely also is because in real time, when we're recording this, yesterday was actually the anniversary of the confession. And so we're recording this 14 years and one day after that. So 14 years ago, right now, we were kind of in the middle of
what we're going to talk
about and how we were fighting for our marriage. And so when we started talking about that, we knew that this was probably going to be more than one episode. Yeah. And so what our goal is, we want to tell kind of the first steps and the things that in my opinion, they were kind of the non-negotiables that these things had to happen. And if they hadn't happened, I don't know that we certainly wouldn't be doing what we're doing right now. And I don't even know if we would still be married. But then after those things kind of took root, then we began this lengthy process of forgiveness and rebuilding trust and creating boundaries and really just creating a brand new marriage. And so we're going to kind of divide it up into those two. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see us in the same clothes for 2 weeks in a row. We're actually going to be out of town next week. And so because of that, we're going to go ahead and record this as 2 separate episodes.
Yeah.
So just to give
and
a
I'm
heads
really
up.
excited about it because the confession, I've had so many people reach out and be like, that was so hard. Like, how do you do that? How do you do it? And the confession, yes, those moments were the hardest of my life. And then we went back to, how did I get there? And that's no fun either. But although the redemption part is the moment, it's what we want everyone to hear, it's still exceedingly hard to walk through because I was in such a dark place that it's really hard to relive. And then from that moment, you were in a dark place too. So all the before and the confession, those episodes, that was, of course, with the confession, I drew you in. But these days of what we did next were hard. And here's what I want people to hear as you listen to this. When I found out I had breast cancer, there was a plan. Like, I went to my oncologist and she said, okay, you have breast cancer. You're going to get a port. We're going to do this many,
Chemos.
Thank you, of chemotherapy. Then you're going to have a double mastectomy, and then we're going to continue chemotherapy, and this is going to be a year of your life. That was the plan. When we went through infidelity and confession of that, there was no playbook. Like, we didn't know what to do. And not only that, you may be listening to this thinking, okay, they're going to give me a playbook, but it may be completely different for you. And here's the thing. It's the same thing with breast cancer. Do you know how many women that I've walked through with breast cancer, including your sister and your cousin, and all of our paths were different.
Right. Everybody has a different playbook.
Everybody has a different playbook. It's like, okay, well, yours is this kind of cancer.
Yeah.
Like, mine wasn't hormone driven, but it was HER2 positive. And so that's more aggressive. So you're going to do this, but yours is hormone positive. So you're going to go this route. Some people have radiation. Some people have double mastectomies. Some people have lumpectomies. And it's all different depending on your body and how you respond to things and what the type of cancer it is. So what I need you to hear me say is this. This is our playbook. It's what we did. This may not work exactly for you. Like, if we throw out something we did it in desperation of trying to do the best thing we could do and honor God the best we could. And if that one thing doesn't work for you, you don't get to go to your spouse and say, well, they said we had to do this. You have to do what is best for your marriage and your situation.
Well, that is an incredible analogy. And when you were going through breast cancer, when you talk to, let's just say, my cousin, she dealt with it before you did. And so when you talked to her and you found out, well, yours is different from mine, you didn't stop talking to her.
Right.
Because, oh, well, yours is different. So I'll go find somebody else that's exactly like mine.
Right.
No, because she was able to tell you some things that happened along the way and give you some heads up. And more than anything, it was an encouragement that I beat this thing.
That's right.
And so, that's the message. And so your story, it might not be just like ours.
That's right.
But there are some things that you can learn from what's happened. And if nothing else, like I said, you're going to get encouragement because you're going to look at a couple then you can say, okay, they made it. we can make it.
Right.
We can beat this thing.
Yeah. And not only that, but dang, they went through infidelity. Maybe your story doesn't have infidelity.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, they went through infidelity and they made it. Surely we can make it through XYZ.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
Sounded like Logan. He always says XYZ.
XYZ. Okay. All right. So, sorry, that cough came out of nowhere. Okay, let's talk just for a minute. I do think you guys, a lot of you know our story. You've heard so much of our story, and you've listened to our confession. So you also heard us on the confession. We talked about Tuesday, August the 23rd, 2011. That's when you confessed to me. And then it was 3 days later, so on the 26th, that just a lot more information came out. And all of the information that came out just made it, the confession itself on the 23rd was big enough. Mm-hmm. It was a big enough piece of information to damage and theoretically destroy any marriage. But as more information came out and I began to realize, deeper secrets and deeper lies,
right,
then it was really, really obvious at that point that not like I said, not that August the 23rd was minimal,
right,
was massive,
right,
but the 26th hit and all of that information came out and it just grew exponentially.
right.
And so I think
and that's when it became public.
That's when it came. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great point so that people know that's why our story is public, because it did all come out 3 days later, which added to just all of the secrets and the deep darkness that came along with it. So I say all that because I want us to kind of be able to pick up from there as we start moving into, because we did mention it on the
we did,
and
on the confession one.
That's right.
Yep.
And we try to be so sensitive too, because we don't want to tell other people's stories, and so we're telling our story,
right?
And we want you guys to honor that along with us. And so really, when everything came out, I think for those first 2 or 3 days, it was such a, before Friday hit, it was such a shock, and we were in survival mode, that there wasn't just a lot of talk about, okay, these are the steps that have to happen. Because I don't know, maybe it didn't feel at the moment, it was, I don't even know how to say this, because it was desperate, but there was no thinking clearly. It was really hard for me to get my mind wrapped around, okay, what do we do from here? How do we move forward from here? But when the bomb all exploded on that Friday, I think that there became this reality on my side. I think from Tuesday to Friday, I felt like I'm willing to listen to God, and I'm going to fight for my marriage. Friday hit, and it was like, okay, it's go time now. Like there's some non-negotiables, and if these things don't happen immediately, I'm out of here.
Yep.
And yeah,
well, I just want to tell you how I felt over those days. On that Tuesday, I was sad. Like, I was really sad, and I was like, where are we going to go from here? But there were only about 6 people that knew. And so everything felt very contained. And so I was sad, but I didn't feel out of control. On that Friday, I shifted from sad to scared. Like, I felt my world literally falling apart around me. Like, even though in those first few days I told my dad, which was exceedingly hard, after that, after Friday, I knew everyone was going to know. And that out of control, like, I don't want to, say, oh, this is how I'm feeling right now. But like, my heart's racing. I'm anxious, because that was the scaredest that I had ever been, that I was going to lose my family. It was, there's no way. Like, I thought Tuesday was bad. Now that he knows everything, there's no way he's going to stay. And so I felt like my world was completely falling apart. I don't know why. I feel like I need to say this here, but we deal with a lot of people that have more to their story. It's like, okay, there's this part, but then there's also this part. And you think, oh, well, I've told them this part, but if I tell them the rest, there's no way they're going to stay, or they're going to it's going to hurt too much or anything like that. But what I need you to hear me say in this moment was, even though that was the scaredest I had ever been in my life on that Friday, there was freedom in knowing there was nothing else you were going to find out. Like, you knew it all. And even though I was scared, it was a moment of, okay, if he stays through this, we're going to make it. And we're going to be able to fight for our marriage. But fear upon fear upon fear.
Well,
okay,
that was
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That was the day that I became really scared too, because when things go public, then, yeah, you're right. You're not in control anymore. So for those first couple of days, we were somewhat in control of our situation, even though I didn't know what that control looked like. I knew that I wasn't really in control of you, because for all of these months, I had not that I need to control you, but I had no idea what you were doing. Yep. And so for those few days, I felt like
you thought you knew what I was doing, but I was doing something different, which is completely like, oh, well, wait. Not only am I not controlling her, but I have no idea she was doing all of this. Like, that's a significant difference.
Yeah. And I said on a previous podcast, in telling our story, that if Tuesday had not happened, where I got that part of the story and God said, you have permission to leave, but I'm asking you to stay. And then Friday, everything happened. And like I said, I don't know that I would have stayed. But I had heard God, and I believe that God would not change his mind between Tuesday and Friday, because it wasn't like that was a surprise to him. And so when I think back to just how scared and terrified I was, because I wondered, am I going to keep my job? I'm in a support raising ministry, and I thought people are not going to support us anymore. And I thought about our kids not living in the same house. I thought about Christmas and what that was going to look like. I have a great relationship with your family, and what was that going to look like? Friends, were we even going to be able to keep friends? And, church, like, we were very involved in leadership positions at our church, and all of that, I was like, it's all over.
Yeah.
Like it is crashing down, and it's all over. But I do know that when that happened, I was able to, it was do or die at that point. I don't know that on Tuesday, I didn't know that it had to be do or die then. I didn't even know what that meant. And so on Friday, it became, all right, here's the rules, basically. And the first thing was, I had to make it very clear to you that it was stopping. Like, whatever life you had been living for the previous however many months, it had to end immediately.
Yep.
There was no dabbling and 1 foot over here and 1 foot back over here. It was all over. And not only that, but I had to make sure that you knew that there was no communication, none. And there, like, I kept your phone for a while, because I was like, there's not going to be any communication. And if something comes in your way, I want to know, because I'm going to be the one that responds, not you.
And there did.
And it did. It did. So those two things were non-negotiables: stop and sever immediately. And then we started getting into, okay, this is your opportunity to tell me, because if more comes out, it's the end of the line.
Yep.
I'm not hearing any more secrets revealed after this.
Yep.
And again, you guys are probably out there listening and you're thinking, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Did you get all of the details? There's no way. Zero. There's no way to get all of the information.
Nor did you want all of it.
Nope, I didn't want all of it because I knew that a lot of it was going to be more painful than I needed to know. But here was the goal, and this is what I want people to hear when you're wondering, how much do I need to know? I needed to get enough information that I knew that you were telling me the truth, and that if I asked you for specific information, more information, that you would tell me. But there was not going to be anything earth-shattering or surprising from that point forward. It was more of just, if I need to know more details, I can ask you and you would be willing to tell me. But we learned along the way that I had to start asking myself, is this information going to help things, or is it just going to hurt more? And some of you might be thinking, well, it's going to help because it's going to help put pieces together. What good does that do?
Well, and it doesn't matter how many pieces you get, you're never going to put the whole puzzle together.
Never going to put the puzzle together. And so I had to just get to a place, and I won't tell this whole part of this story, but Friday happened. Sunday, 2 days later, we were being basically thrust into this position where you were going to be forced to reveal some things in kind of a group setting because somebody asked us to be a part of this this meeting. And so on the way there, you just kind of word vomited everything else out, or everything, because you were saying, you were like, if we get here and somebody else knows more information than what I've told him, it's going to be devastating and we won't come back from it. So going into that situation, I knew. And then even after leaving that, I thought to myself, I truly know more than anybody else in this situation. And so we left that. And like I said, I could have probably at that point, just knowing I have enough information to know that no other big bomb's going to be dropped that I'm going to be completely shocked or surprised about. But I also have this understanding of, I will tell you if you need to know something. And so once those things happen, stop, sever, no more secrets. I mean, this is a step that I just think a lot of people miss. Not even a lot of people, almost everybody misses. But I told you, I said, this will never happen again. And I had to draw that line in the sand and say, if it happens again, I don't have to stay and I won't stay. Because at that point, there's this value of who I am and who I am in Christ and what I know that I don't have to stick around and put up with this over and over and over again. And so for me, that was a very crucial part in the story. And I think that there's a lot of people that they don't actually ever come out and say that. And then it happens again. And then they're like, oh no, what do I do now? Because I really didn't, you can leave, you can, but there's this pull to be like, well, I mean, we didn't really deal with it, and now it's happened again. And so I know how hard that is. And it's
scary because you're putting your whole future in somebody else's hands. Like, if you do this again, not only is it affecting me, but it's affecting our kids, it's affecting our family tree, it's affecting everything, all because you aren't following the rules.
And like what we said, everybody's story is so different. I mean, God led us into some real actionable steps that I don't even know how we got there.
Well, I know, because I believe that you were seeking the Lord so hard. Like, you were asking for his guidance and you were trusting people that were godly people. Because let's be clear, there were people all around you telling you to leave.
Yeah.
All around you telling you to leave. And I don't see how you were able to decipher which ones from the Lord and which ones weren't, because you had people you trusted saying you're crazy if you stay. But then you chose to listen to the men who were godly influences in your life. And then, of course, you heard from the Lord, I'm asking you to stay, so many days before. But I want to speak into that moment where, because I remember it clearly, you looked at me in the eyes and you said, if you see him, if you text him, if you call him, if you manage to meet up, like this wasn't just, if you have another affair. This was, if you cross any line, we're done. And like, I knew that to be true. And honestly, I mean, let's be real. In that moment, I was more concerned about losing my kids than I was our marriage being over. But I do think that God used my being tethered to the boys as something that pulled me back in and held me there while he did the work on my heart. And that's why we tell people sometimes, like, find a reason to stay, because God can use that and then open you to what his plan is. Because in that moment, I don't think I would have chosen to stay if you had not said you will lose everything if you step past this line again.
Yeah. And at that point, I was so angry and, had really put my anchor down. And I was willing, I'm a nice person, but after what I had been through and what you had done to me, at that point, I would not have cared about you.
Right.
I was only caring about my kids.
Boys. That's right.
And I wasn't going to allow them to be a part of what you were doing.
Exactly.
And so I was willing to go any length to protect them.
Yeah.
And fortunately, what happened was you agreed to those things. Maybe you didn't really want to, but you knew you had to. And then that's what led to the next step was you repented and you moved from worldly sorrow to godly sorrow, but it didn't just happen in those first couple of days after I laid down the law. So if you want to share a little bit about what happened there.
Sure. So this part of the story is when I look back on it, I know that only God could have done this and orchestrated this. There's nothing in my power or anything that I can look back to say, oh, I did that right. I didn't. I will never forget my mentor telling me that God is going to pursue you. I mean, he's going to chase you down, and he was after me. He was after my heart, and I was running from him and running from him and running from him. And in the moment that I moved from worldly sorrow, and if that's your first time, if this is your first time hearing that phrase, worldly sorrow is when you are way more sad and concerned about the fact that your worldly reputation. I was embarrassed. I knew my reputation was ruined. I knew, my dad was 6 months from retiring from 36 years as a minister at our church, and I felt like I had destroyed his reputation and his ministry. All of these things are not true, but it's what I was telling myself. And so I was very much embarrassed that this had happened and that I got caught. But then several days later, 10 days later, I shifted to godly sorrow. And that's where I realized that I had sinned against God. Yes, I had sinned against you. Yes, I had sinned against friends and relationships there. Like, there were a lot of people that trickled down to. But none of that would have ever happened if I had not sinned against God. And so, but that was the first time I could see it. So this was on September 2nd. So we've been from August 23rd to September 2nd. And my mentor and two of my friends brought me, they said we were going to go shopping. They just said, we want to just spend some time with you. But then when I got to this friend's house, they were like, actually, we just want to talk for a little while before we leave. Well, obviously we never left. It may have been all made up. I don't know. But they said, let's talk a little bit and see, how you're doing. And I was mad. Like, I can remember being like, I thought we were going to go shopping. I don't want to talk about this, because I knew they knew that I was wrong in doing this, but I wasn't quite ready to admit that. So we started talking. They were like, how are you feeling? What is, then what, what's your family going to look like? All of those things. And I can remember Penny, my mentor, talking to me about the fact that my sin was heavy because I had sinned against God. And it is nothing magical, she said, nothing magical in the place where I was, but God just decided to show up. And he showed up in a very powerful way, and he completely broke my heart. It was a moment that I will never forget. It was a brokenness, and it was like I had on a different lens, and then they just fell, and I could see everything so incredibly clear. And I began to cry for what I had done, and cried for what I had caused, like the hurt that I had caused. And I can remember like not being able to lift my shoulders and my head off of the floor. Like it was a physical reaction to the heaviness of my sin. And I was crying, and I can remember thinking, of course, all of this happened really, really fast, but it felt like it was in slow motion. I can remember thinking about learning that the weight of the sin of the world was on Jesus's shoulders when he died on the cross. Like he took every sin that anyone had ever committed against him, and he died for that sin, all of those sins. And I remember thinking, he had the weight of the world on him, and I only have my sin, the weight of my sin, and I couldn't lift up my head. And I just remember thinking, that's how much he loves me. Like he loved me to die on the cross, and what he did on the cross was enough. And Penny put her hand on me, and she said, very, very like claiming this. She said, God, please don't let her see her sin without catching a glimpse of her Savior. And that the weight of my sin was so heavy that I had to be able to see my Savior in order to lift my head again. And I continued to cry, and it was a sobbing. And they all just loved on me. And even though I know that those two friends were disappointed, they knew that I had hurt you. They both had husbands that were your best friends at the time. And I'm sure they were very mad at me for hurting you. But they put that aside along with my mentor and were like, God, how do you want to use us to help her see you? And because of their just unbelievable love for me, I know that I was in a place that I was being prayed for. And they weren't the only people praying. A lot of times I hear people say, I pray and I pray and my prayers aren't answered. My prayers aren't answered. My prayers aren't answered. But I believe that there were people praying all around, that your parents were praying, my parents, my family, aunts, uncles, like everybody. And then people that probably didn't want to admit that they were praying for us were praying for us. And for whatever reason, God chose that moment to let all of those prayers be answered. And it was a healing moment for me. And I say healing along with the brokenness, because it was broken. I just was absolute ashes. And then it was God put me back together, put me back, not fix the old me. I didn't want to fix the old me. I wanted to be a brand new creation. And I wanted nothing to do with that life or that person that I had been before. And so for me, that moment is what turned, and it's like the lady when the lady was caught in adultery, and there were men wanting to stone her because stoning was the penalty for adultery. I mean, stoning until death. And Jesus said, those of you who are without sin, cast the first stone. And they all dropped their stones. But the most beautiful part to me is that he goes to the lady who was caught in adultery, and which is, okay, I won't go there, a whole nother story, but caught in adultery, and he lifts her head and he says, you are forgiven. Now go and sin no more. And that was my moment. That was my moment where not only was I forgiven, and I asked God's forgiveness in that moment, but I turned 180 degrees and was walking away from my sin. Now, were there times where I was like, oh gosh, and should I look back and what would that be like? But yes, there were. But I turned and I wanted nothing to do with my sin. I wanted nothing to do with that lifestyle. And that was the moment that my life changed forever. I fell in love with Jesus, and I ran towards him from that day on. Do I mess up? Yes. Do I have hard days? Yes. But there is a constant moving towards him. If you're not moving towards him, you're moving away. There is no, let me just hang out in this moment. You're either moving towards Jesus and trying to look more like him, or you're moving away. So repentance, that was my moment. That's where everything changed. And that's where we were able to say, okay, now we're here. How do we move forward?
So, when you're watching your favorite TV show and it pops up right there and says to be continued, That's what I'm about to do to our listeners. Hey, we have much more to this story that we want to share with you next week. So we're going to ask that you come back next week, and we're going to pick up right here where we left off. So until then,
peace.
Peace.